So I think I learned so much from the trip. I learned about the cemeteries on the island and the funeral practices and how it's very similar to what I experienced when I was still living in Malaysia. And so I was very surprised and I guess also heartwarming for me to see like the connections across the Pacific.
The thing that is staying with me that I think I learned from this trip the most is going to a lot of cemeteries across the island and kind of feeling connected to the history of Chinese Canadians, like on the island, but also Vancouver and Canada, North America in general. And I think it really connected me to my own family history and my culture that my family are not so big on actually. So it was actually really interesting to learn about what Chinese people do at cemeteries and how they visit their ancestors. So there was a lot of introspection.
Actually, my great-great-grandfather came to Canada as a miner, so the opportunity to go to different mining exhibitions and exhibits in these different museums across Vancouver Island was a special opportunity for me to connect to that part of my family's history that I just don't know much about. The other big thing that I learned was that I'm actually pretty insulated in the Chinese Canadian community through my research and just that's just where I come from. So the opportunity to go to some gurdwaras and experience or learn a bit more about Punjabi Canadian history is very special and important to me as well. I think it's just more intercultural understanding. I think as a person who is Chinese Canadian, I kind of get that as part of my lived experiences, but just having the awareness that there are a lot of cultures and communities I don't know much about and learning how to kind of navigate those spaces in a way that's reciprocal and respectful is something that's just going to be incredibly important wherever I go.
I think one thing that really resonated with me, so we had Dr. Sharon Sandra at the Baldi Gurdwara as a speaker. She was mentioning how a lot of the old artifacts and photos have just been kind of thumbtacked onto the wall over the years, and because of that they've kind of been a little bit destroyed or they haven't really been archived or stored with the respect that they deserve. She called it thumbtack history and how people from that community need to learn how to become historians or work in museums or collect these kinds of histories in an ethical and respectful way. So I think that really resonated with me because I think lately I was feeling kind of demotivated with the work that I do. I do a lot of Punjabi oral history work, but then I think she kind of reminded me of the deeper purpose. Another thing, being more of a critical museum visitor. So that's something that Dr. Imogene Lim really taught us, especially at the Cumberland Museum. Even small things I hadn't thought about before, how things are in space and where are things relative to each other, and oh, if you're a short person, can you even read this? Or oh, is there context to that? So I think those kinds of things are really important because I would say I was a pretty passive museum visitor before this trip.
I wasn't expecting to learn so much about museums on the trip, and just Imogene talking about her perspective, critically looking at how the museum curators decided to put certain belongings and artifacts in the museum. I thought that was very meaningful, and I took away a lot from that.
Just being able to go to the different historical sites and cemeteries with Imogene was really special because I feel like she had a lot of expertise and knowledge about local history that we otherwise would not have known about or been able to experience just going there without her to guide us and talk to us about these historical spaces.
I was one of the newer batch of RAs, I just came on in May, and it felt like I was going into an already established group where people had worked with each other on projects and were friends. So I think if I hadn't gone on the trip, I wouldn't have bonded with my fellow RAs in such a meaningful way. And I felt like I really got to break the ice with everyone and become meaningful friends. It was really nice for me to get to know everyone personally. And there's no better way to do that than staying in the same apartment dorms with each other. It was really fun.
I think my favorite part by far was just deepening my friendships with the other RAs and Go Global staff and just people in general, because I'm actually quite introverted, and this was an opportunity for me to just like have fun, make friends, learn stuff. It was a lot of fun, so I'm glad I went.